When everyone realizes we're all here for the same purpose and we're here to serve, we remind people that, and the egos kind of realign.
Yeah.
But you have to do it at the top. And I never throw titles around or any. If I have to do that, then there's something broken in the culture.
Hey there, Powderkeg fans. This is episode 98 of Powderkeg Igniting Startups, the show for entrepreneurs, leaders, and innovators building remarkable tech companies in areas decidedly outside of Silicon Valley. I'm your host, Matt Hunkler, and today we're going to be talking to Marcus Cobb, CEO at Jammber, a Nashville-based music technology company focused on streamlining the incredibly complicated process of creating a song, sharing it with the world, and ultimately getting paid and getting credit for it. Marcus is a technologist, product designer, public speaker, and successful entrepreneur, and he comes from modest and humble beginnings in El Paso, Texas, where he was born and raised. He's definitely become one of the most highly sought after investors, mentors, and strategists for numerous organizations, and his most recent role is a CEO and co-founder of Jammber, which is a company that I came across 2-3 years ago as Powderkeg was expanding into Nashville. Awesome to have Marcus here. Marcus, thank you so much for taking time on a Friday afternoon.
Man, happy to, man. I appreciate it. I always love talking to you. So I am here, bells on, kind of jumping into this beautiful entrepreneurial journey. So here we go.
Likewise, my friend. And you have been up to a lot right now at Jammber in the last 2 years. Been following from afar on social media. And I definitely want to dive into that. But before we do, I always love to kind of go back to the roots. Where did it all begin for you? Where'd you grow up, and how did you first get exposed to this thing called entrepreneurship and technology?
Yeah, you touched on it. I grew up in El Paso, Texas, which I'm at an age now in my early 40s where I'm really more aware of kind of the circumstances I was born out of that brought me here. All the things I didn't appreciate before. It's funny. I just tweeted when I first read Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. That book really pissed me off. Matter of fact, I emailed him immediately reading that book because I felt it was super kind of we're all a product of our destiny and our environment, right? And even outliers are really lucky in the fact they are because of certain things they can't control. And being an entrepreneur, that really rubbed me the wrong way. Now, 10 years later, that's exactly how I feel. Is that, super lucky to be here. While I had choices inside of my circumstances, I didn't have choices outside of those circumstances, right? And I'm pretty thankful for that. El Paso is a very industrious town. It's been in the news lately to a tragedy we just had there. It really brought the nation together, I think, to wrap their arms around El Paso. But El Paso's been a city that's wrapped its arms around its people for as long as I can remember.
You still have family there?
I still have family there, yeah. I have family there. I haven't been to El Paso in a while, though, so now it's on my heart. I want to go as soon as possible. But I say that to say, that I think that foundation, even though I grew up in a pretty poor neighborhood, we had a state-of-the-art computer lab. We had bookmobiles, which are like basically ice cream trucks full of books that kind of ride around the neighborhood. Yeah.
I was a patron of the bookmobile for sure.
Were you really? Yeah, man. I literally just found old Encyclopedia Brown books that I used to love as a kid.
That's awesome.
And then I've told the story many times. My grandmothers were, they would celebrate everything I would do, no matter how small it was. Just putting like an electric motor to a 9-volt battery would wow them, right? And
how would they celebrate it?
Usually, like, just a lot of it was, praises and applauds and pats on the back. I think destiny flirts with all of us when we're kids in a certain way.
Absolutely.
And I believe that positive reinforcement really helps the sparks of destiny blaze into flames. Positive reinforcement goes a long way, and my grandmothers were all about that. I could do no wrong in their eyes. Except talking back, I'd get in trouble for that. But as far as the curiosity that consumed me, it was cool. Just as a quick anecdote, I actually got in trouble one time because from the bookmobile in the library, I learned how to build, or I thought I learned how to build a a ruby laser. And all I needed to do was find a synthetic ruby, which was really hard to do when you're 11. And
Right. You didn't know any synthetic ruby dealers when you were at
no,
11?
yeah. They weren't in the phone book. But what I did find in the phone book is, for those of us who know what a phone book is, was a gas supplier, so I could buy neon gas. And
Wow.
I remember calling up, and this gentleman who answered the phone was like, "Son, do you know neon gas can kill you?" And I was like, "Goodbye, thank you." Hung up the phone. So, fast forward, I had a pretty, definitely at times a rough childhood that I don't like to shed a lot of light on, but just acknowledge that it was there. And
were there any particular circumstances that you feel like really helped? The fact that you went through those experiences helped you later in your career?
Yeah, I was my stepfather was an abusive, kind of angry guy, just not a good guy, not a good person at all. And if you've ever been in an abusive relationship when you're a kid, especially, you get some baggage out of it, but you also get some superpowers out of it if you're lucky enough to survive it. The baggage is you might be a little more codependent, you might be a little less trusting, those kind of things. But some of the superpowers is that you learn how to take a hit and you learn how to get back up, and you learn how to go into an environment that would normally be full of fear, but find this bubble of hope. You find ways to escape even in toxic places, and those tools can become really powerful for an entrepreneur, especially of kind of painting your own reality. I would prefer not to have gone through that. I don't want to glorify it in any way whatsoever. I don't think it was a necessary ingredient, but I do think that, I am fortunate that I'm a little stronger today. I really don't, I'm not afraid of much, except maybe my kids growing up too fast. So with that in mind, those elements really made me escape into school more and escape into books more. And I played basketball a lot.
Were there any books in particular that for you were very inspiring? And I imagine to be able to turn that kind of experience into an opportunity, and to your point, would never wish that experience on anyone in the world either. Right. Well, but to be able to turn that into opportunity is pretty amazing and a superpower in and of itself.
Yeah, I would, definitely Encyclopedia Brown books. I thought I kind of was Encyclopedia Brown, like this kid.
It's awesome.
This wit beyond his age, beyond his years.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember Calvin and Hobbes books.
Of course.
There was something about, as much as Hobbes was an imaginary friend and toy, he came alive in the books in a way that I fantasized about too, right? I was like, that's my friend, and the adventures they would go on together. But really, any book that I could comprehend that would satisfy certain curiosity. I got really big in aerodynamics as a kid. I remember I sent a bunch of designs for spacecrafts to NASA when I was young. And
what was it about aerodynamics? I mean, a lot of kids are just like into G.I. Joe, or they're into, little more normal skateboarding, but you're like, I was into aerodynamics. What was it about that really intrigued you?
I've never been asked that question before. When you ask me, I think subconsciously it was wanting to fly, wanted to fly away, and that there was a science to that. There was a science and science was always fair. So I think subconsciously it makes you feel pretty powerful, like to embrace the sorcery of science and to find a way to understand it and manipulate it to achieve these really amazing results. So as a kid, when I learned about airfoils and the dynamics of power and thrust, that was a promise that with the right tools I could fly. And I even tried to build an airplane once with my brother as a test pilot, but we were low on budget because we were 12. So our airplane was actually a shopping cart with a 2x4 across the top of it. But
that's awesome.
We did have an ejection seat made out of a stroller and walkie-talkies just in case he happened to fly.
Always be prepared.
Always be prepared. You never know. We were optimistic kids.
I like the optimism goes a long way.
And again, that's kind of that's actually also part of the Mexican culture that is prevalent in El Paso, is that everything is a community project. It's not just one person. There were probably 8 to 10 other kids helping me build this airplane, and nobody's afraid of work. Hard work is just in our blood, So
were you the Tom Sawyer kid that was?
I was.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I was.
Me too.
I was just so thankful looking back. So that backdrop really, high school years were tough, but I think a lot of that was there. And the one thing that was a little more pliable was computer science, right?
Yeah.
I could just get to a computer, I could do something and explore some new magic. And so there was an old school graphic language called Apple Logo that was this little turtle on the screen, and you could basically send signals to this turtle, like go left, go right, and the turtle, which now looking back was like poop, but it's basically a line that followed the turtle, and you could draw anything, right? So those were kind of my first programs.
I think I remember that. I didn't have the attention span for it, but I think I remember that.
Oh, you're talking way back. I literally built a choose your own adventure book game using Apple Logo.
That's so cool.
Charged my friends 25 cents and blow pops to play it, and I carried that floppy disk around with me for like 3 years, just continuing.
Like when the disk was actually floppy?
Literally a floppy disk. I think it was like 512K, which was massive at the time. I'm showing my real, but
I remember that. I was always using old computer gear and hacking stuff together.
Right? It's like there's a release in it. You tinker and then lights come on, and there's something really rewarding.
It's magic.
The lights come on. It's magic. Exactly. It is. And I had a computer science teacher. My first formal setting was in my senior year of high school. And he really, again, just kind of saw how quickly I was picking up Visual Basic at the time, and let me and my buddy teach class halfway through the year as a way to, he came out to us. He's like, hey guys, look, you're picking this up really quickly. You're skipping ahead in the chapters. There's not much more I can teach you except to teach you guys how to teach yourselves. And to do that, you guys are going to teach class for the rest of the school year. I already cleared it with the dean. It's a done deal.
Wow.
He doesn't know. I've tried to find a couple of times that was actually became a turning point in my life.
Yeah. How did that feel?
I joke all the time when I tell the story to kids that I was pretty short-sighted when I got that information. Because there was this really, really pretty girl in my class. Her name was Misty, and I got in trouble all the time for hanging out at Misty's desk and talking to her, And then my first thought was, now I can talk to Misty as much as I want to and not get in trouble. So that was my teenage mind. That was my first thought there. But it made the school paper, and I went to a great school in Las Vegas, Nevada, called Cimarron Memorial at the time, and it made the school paper. And again, the school itself had a culture of really setting kids free. It was mostly a wealthy school, upper middle class and upper class, but there were a few of us that were lower class. And it didn't matter. The school was just kind of a melting pot, and our friends were the same way. One of the people who got a hold of that kind of news article, if you will, was a woman by the name of Charmaine Yank, who has since passed, but her daughter went to the same school I did. We were all kind of in the same friend group. And Charmaine was the first entrepreneur I ever met in my life.
Oh, wow. How old were you?
I was 19, actually, at the time. So I was 19, and I didn't even know what an entrepreneur was. I definitely wasn't even sure what I was going to do for work. At this time, IS jobs weren't huge, at least in my purview. That wasn't really a career. And this woman, who, to tell you about herself, was so amazing that one day she surprised all of us with an Easter egg hunt, and all the eggs had IOUs. As kids, we thought we're just entertaining this crazy old lady before we could eat. But in fact, she had everything from like $500 for your college books to your class ring paid for in her backyard. That's the kind of heart she had. She gave away a lot of money that day to kids who needed it and kids who didn't need it because she just felt compelled to do so. And after that, she came up to me. She's like, young man, I heard you do computers. I saw your name in the school paper. You're a genius. I'm like, yes, ma'am. Thank you. I appreciate it so much. She goes, I'm going to hire you. You start tomorrow. I'll pay you X dollars. At the time, it was $20 an hour.
Wow.
So that woman, it was huge, man. I mean, I was living in Section 8 housing, and near projects at the time, right? And so this woman was making me this offer, and what was a mansion at the time. And so you talk about the tale of two cities. That she changed my life, because what was so magical about her is, even though I had this really turbulent background, she was everything I thought I wasn't. She was, very Hollywood in a way, tall, blonde, big blonde hair everywhere, and gold bangle bracelets everywhere in her red sports car, and, for things. But in reality, her background was actually worse than mine. And one of the most amazing things she did for me was attack what I call the poverty mentality, and the sense of the Cinderella complex of feeling like someone owes you something, and wishing and hoping for your fairy godmother to show up, right? And that's actually one of the most dangerous things, I think. One of the downsides of some forms of welfare is that you're always waiting to be helped and rescued. She wouldn't tolerate that. Like, I was physical. I used to call her mom as a nickname, it's out of respect. Was I went through physical abuse? She's like, me too. Get to work. My parents are not very nice people. Mine either. Get to work. I don't want to hear it. And all my excuses would fall flat. The only language we had was the language of work, and that was a turning point in my life.
For someone who has that Cinderella mentality, and I think if most people, if they're honest with themselves, has that somewhere in the back of their mind, maybe some more prevalent than others. How can they maybe start to quiet that voice, or start to replace that voice with a more empowering message?
I mean, the one consistent currency of destiny is diligence, which is painstaking effort. No one can take that from you. And when you start seeing the reward of that, you don't want anyone to. I think all of us, when we endure some level of pain, we can't help but romanticize about someone soothing that pain. And I like to say, I think the one voice everyone has is the one scream we all have innately is, I have value. And I think we all need love, and we all need people to acknowledge that value in us. And sometimes being rescued is a promise, maybe even a false promise, that people rescue us because they see our value. And the downside of that, though, is that no one can actually carry your destiny and theirs at the same time. So while people can meet us where we're at, and they can inspire us like Charmaine did me and many, many others along my life, that's the difference, is that you have rest points, but you can't just lay in someone's lap until the storm goes away. You fill up your tank, and you continue to pursue your destiny. In my opinion, that seems to be what I've learned about my life. And even when I read biographies of the many people I study, it seems to be consistent across the board.
Yeah, that's great feedback. Well, and it sounds like that sort of like coaching and nurturing was met with commitment and follow through on your part. What was your next big breakthrough?
Actually, it was kind of a bit of a whitewater rapids after that. I got hired I joined this marketing company that was growing really fast. They had a falling out with their resident IS manager at the time. They had over 300 employees, a couple different locations. And I was just there. So they put me in as kind of an acting director of IT at the age of 19. And the job was relatively easy for me. I loved it. It was both hardware and software. And I got to learn from other managers how to be a manager at a young age, which was cool. And then I got picked up by Microsoft shortly after that on it's like healthcare innovations team at the time. And both of those were pretty striking breakthroughs for me. And then it just kind of took off from there. Now, not to say, there were a lot of speed bumps. You take a kid like me and you throw me into corporate America, you're going to have some speed bumps. There's going to be some learnings.
Do you remember a particular instance that was particularly challenging to get through or recover from, or maybe not recover from?
Yeah, I just think the norms that we take for granted in business and in everything from email etiquette to, I one time showed up late for a meeting with Microsoft executives to show off our tech that we built with between Microsoft and WebMD at the time. And this was really breakthrough tech. And I was the lead on it. And I was the youngest person on the team, and I was the only person without an advanced degree. And I think a little bit of arrogance might have came with that at the time, because I showed up to this meeting with 90 minutes late with Starbucks in my hand, and I had no idea what was wrong with that scenario.
Oh, no.
But I got pulled aside, and actually fired from that job not too long after that, just for those reasons. And that was one of the best fires I've ever had. It was a wake-up call. Unfortunately, Microsoft invited me back years later in different roles. But it was definitely, my character had to catch up with my talents, and I had to learn that invisible language of respect and regard with people by just respecting their time, showing up, being responsive. But it was not an overnight thing by any means.
What does that word character mean to you? And how can people, whether they're an entrepreneur or they're a software developer or they're a project manager, how can they develop character faster?
I'm not sure I want to project my definition of character on other people, because it's pretty intense. But
Sure.
I come from a Baptist background, kind of fire brimstone type of character. So it's not quite that what I grew up with. But those, there's still some biases there, I think. One definition I heard for integrity that always stuck with me is that integrity is keeping your word to your own hurt. And it's easy to take that a little too far from a codependent standpoint, but I still lean on that, because if you make a promise that you end up suffering from a little bit of pain for, you're less likely to use your words and your promises so lightly the next time, right? You kind of hold yourself accountable. And I think that's really what that means. So I think character is really most manifested when your life is bigger than yourself and there's a general healthy regard for other people around you. I mean, I think those ingredients, the more you have a regard for people in a healthy way, your character will kind of find itself.
What were some of the benefits that you cultivated from developing some of that character and applying it to your career? And how did that kind of set you up to what you're doing now as the founder and CEO of Jammber?
Well, on one hand, I've had some really amazing mentors and managers along the way. I grew up in an era, while I'm learning this computer science stuff, there are these really big scandals on the screen, like Enron at the time, right? And
sure.
It fascinated me that 30 people in a boardroom, I don't know what the exact number was, but 30 people in a boardroom could create such a vacuum and make so much wealth evaporate that would leave a crater, literally a black hole in the economy of people's lives. And that felt like an injustice to me. And it felt like it was really heartbreaking at the time, having had the contrast of knowing someone like Charmaine as an entrepreneur and seeing these people who were so nonchalant, at least it appeared that way on TV, about the damage that we're causing. And they were so afraid of, being held accountable themselves that the lie just went on and went on and went on. And I think a lot of people fake it until they make it, especially when you talk to startup founders, you see that across the board. But I think it's something different to be reckless with billions and billions of dollars, people's things. So you make a decision as a person. Where's your line of, where's your line of integrity? When does it go from faking it till you make it until you're suddenly a Katie Holmes, a Theranos? How do you play your cards, so to speak? I think we have to make that decision ourselves, especially as entrepreneurs, because it's impossible to, I'm going to go on a limb here and say, I think it's impossible to have a startup and play by all the rules. I think that the game is rigged, and it's leveraged going into the game. I mean, even venture capital is leveraged, right?
Sure.
So I think it's impossible to play by every single rule. And some of those rules, if you even look at, people will put in rules to maintain their power. Just look at what's happening with Airbnb in different cities and what Uber went through in its initial growth, dealing with taxi medallions across different markets. So yeah, I think it's just finding that balance and being aware of, are you really bringing, being accountable to people around you. I mean, I really think that Katie Holmes, thought that she was bringing saving the world in her own mind and convince herself that it was everything she was doing was worth it. But when you stop heeding all the advice and warnings around you, I think you've gone too far.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it seems like that momentum that you built through your career, while maybe there were setbacks along the way, you get fired from Microsoft.
Yeah.
You picked yourself back up and threw yourself back in the ring and said, okay, I'm going to learn from that. And I'm going to take that lesson and move forward.
Yeah, very much so. I think taking responsibility is also empowering yourself to fix it. If it's my fault, then I can fix it.
Yeah.
I like that.
Well, and I know it's been a couple years since I've heard your full pitch on Jammber, but I've certainly read the headlines as you've raised some money more recently, and love what you're building. Such a cool product. How did you come up with it?
We're geniuses. That's actually what it is. We're just, my fairy godmother flew in through the window. It's like, Marcus, you've worked so hard. Here it is now. Here was your $1 billion plan. And she rolled it out for me. And I just, we just ran with that. That's
Can you send her my way?
I'm going to text her right now. Let her know. Hey, go see Matt.
Thanks, man.
A lot of falling forward, man. Actually, it's, I'll say this again. It's also the tale of two cities. On one hand, Jammber is the epitome of what my dream job would be as an entrepreneur. Even though I've been an entrepreneur for a long time and I've had some success financially and in other ways with that, I never really felt like I arrived by any means. I just got better at making money. If you're doing it for as long as I have and you're not making money and you can't get profitable, you should probably do something else. But when I would, and I imagine other entrepreneurs feel this way too, when I would read Michael Dell's book or Howard Schultz from Starbucks, his book, Pour Your Heart Into It, or stories about Edison or Bill Gates, especially. I mean, one of my favorite stories of all time is the story of Bill Gates and Paul Allen starting Microsoft.
Yeah.
Or watching the Social Network movie about Facebook, right? They walk into these moments where they're like these, there's a Greek word called kairos. And kairos is basically this synthesis of everything being right. The timing's right, the people are right, the environment's right, and something explosive or amazing happens. And you kind of fantasize about that as an entrepreneur, or at least I do. And damn if I don't feel like that's my moment right now. I mean, it's kind of amazing to Jamber's everything that as an entrepreneur I would want. It's needed. It's a bit of a blue ocean. If you ever read Blue Ocean Strategies, there's not a lot of people doing what we're doing.
Absolutely.
The timing is perfect because streaming is forcing an industry to change that has not been able to change itself in over 100 years, and now it's being forced to really rapidly. So I don't think that any one company can bring about disruption. I think we ride it. And because disruption is, it's chaos theories, right? There's so many things you can't control. But here Jammber is at the helm of what I think we have an opportunity to usher in this renaissance of the arts by removing a lot of the red tape that capitalism has put into place of creativity. And all the first iteration of that is getting music creators, songwriters paid faster. And it's that simple use case is incredibly, incredibly difficult and one of the most complex businesses I've ever been in, which is with the Tell Two Cities part. So even though I found my dream opportunity, in many ways, this mountain is bigger than any mountain I've ever climbed before. Yeah. And it's taking everything I've learned in 20 plus years about software design, team management. I've done a lot of fintech platforms. It's taken everything. And even what I came in here with is not enough, right? I'm learning every single day of how to stay on the surfboard, so to speak. So it's fascinating. I'm ecstatic, man. I really am.
That's great to hear, man. How did it all start with Jammber? Was it something that you saw, a problem that you saw? Was it hearing someone talk about the problem?
Yeah, kind of the bullet points. I mean, it's one of those things where in some ways it started, when I was a toddler in my grandmother's house and I wanted to learn how to play piano, and I wrote all the letters on the piano keys in permanent marker and wrote them wrong. I just started from A, B, C, D, and went up the keyboard, and that's not exactly how it works. So I think that, I've always been drawn to music, but I never saw how music and technology would come together. I didn't want to design instruments or anything like that. That wasn't attractive to me. But now the bullet points is really serendipitous. Partly, so I sold a software company, my first solo exit. There's kind of this season of extraordinary success. I was part of the early team at Tickets Now. And that CEO, Mike Domick, sold that company for $270 million to Ticketmaster. And being part of that founding team, we had a lot of swag coming out of that because we knew we built something amazing and great and really, really quickly. So a lot of us wanted to try to reproduce that success. I went on and started another software company, and I sold that. But my first solo exit without that same team around me was a bit depressing. I realized I didn't care as much about the monetary benefits of building a company. I like to build and create great places to work. So I went into a bit of a depression, honestly. I think for me, and I've talked to other entrepreneurs that have felt this way, you become a bit of a Ronin when you exit out. And it took me 2 years to find the light at the end of the tunnel and a purpose to back up again. And I went to a TEDx Midwest in Chicago. And for some reason, just the messages at that TEDx really resonated with me. I had some healthy cleansing tears just about, okay, look, what's my new purpose here? And I was still making money. I actually had a consulting company at the time. We were doing really, really well. But I just hated my job. I hated everything. Yeah. So fast forward, my buddy's like, well, Mark, what else do you have? Like, what else is in your brain? And so we did about 2 weeks of show and tell with my original co-founder. And he's like, what's that one? I'm like, I don't know. It's kind of like a LinkedIn for music industry, man. I see this really big opportunity there. And that became Jammber. I saw it because, and everyone gets a bit of a head fake when I say this, but you know the story where I became a fashion designer for a little while. So after I sold my company, the tech company, I was just burned out on tech, right? Burned out. We're talking, you're working 20 hours a day, everything hardware, software, and you just at some point in time, I think you just burn out, man.
I've got a buddy doing the same thing right now who's started a custom menswear business.
Right? Because it's just not tech. It's like you're still building. And but actually that changed my life, realizing that before I was a tech guy, and in my circle I was the tech guy. You want something built, go to Marcus, right? And matter of fact, when I became a designer, there's a bit of intervention. They all took me to dinner and told me I'd lost my mind, and I was going, and I was ruining our mutual opportunities because I was the tech guy. And now if I'm designing fashion and then lingerie at that, and women's apparel, I'm not much used to these guys if I'm designing their fashion. So, but I just I held on to it, and it ended up being the yin to the yang, which would lead to Jammber.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying it became, I want to be very succinct because it's a bit a long story, but essentially I started designing. I'm not really a good designer. I realized I've always been a designer. Music, software, now fashion, they're actually all designs. And I loved creating designs that would resonate with people and make them happy or change their lives and add some kind of positive value. And fashion was just a new medium. So in some ways that set me free from this box of just being the tech guy. And we got pretty good at it. Even though I'm not a good seamster still. I mean, I can sew a mean zigzag 3-step stitch, but that's not my gift, but I could put together products and design and stories and really resonate with the customer segment. And in fashion, I found it relatively easy to build a team of people that had all these strengths they'd been working on for years, decades, that I could hone into a product that became Marc Wayne, which was the fashion line. Fast forward, we get a phone call one day from this guy's like, hey, I Googled you. we like your designs. I'm doing a music video for Pitbull. He's this artist maybe you've heard of. Look, we're not going to pay you guys, but if you guys want to come down, we need some custom pieces, and we need them in 3 days. And I'm like, wait, I'm sorry, start over again? So, like, I'll see what we can do. And we hang out the phone. We're like, oh my God, we get the design for Pitbull, and it's Pitbull and Baby Bash, this music video they had. So sure enough, flew down there, and that opened a lot of doors across the music industry for me. And I don't even think Pitbull knows that because I was just a designer behind the scenes, right? And I was this designer now, and I got an opportunity to put together a girl band. A guy that was working for Sean Combs at Bad Boy Records at the time, was one of his producers, like, hey, Marcus, we want to put together a girl band with this kind of formula. You love music, man. You love fashion. Come help us put together a product. And I'm like, yeah, how hard can it be to put together a girl band? I'm down. And I can see you, I see you laughing. It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life.
I'm sure.
It was so hard, man. I never get tired of telling the story. It was just really hard. And that was such a contrast to the success I had in fashion. I was really successful in fashion with no background because I was able to put a team around me, right? And here I am in music in Chicago at the time with 8 million people, and I can't put together a girl band of 4 girls. And that was infuriating. And I was like, we need a bigger funnel. I need in the fashion world, I can say I'm looking for, a male model, 5'10", who has experience doing suits. And I'll get 10 options to work with, right? There was no way to do that in the music industry. And that's where we started. At that time, actually, the music listing board was Craigslist. And I always say, anytime Craigslist is number one at something, there's a market opportunity.
Opportunity for disruption, for sure.
So yeah, fast forward, that was the impetus for it. I like to say that Jammber was conceived in Chicago, but born in Nashville. So we had enough traction that we got into the 1871 co-working space, which is a massive in Chicago, right? I know you're familiar with it. It's a pretty cool space, man. They were a Google Entrepreneur Center at the time, or are, and so was the Nashville Entrepreneur Center. They were in the same network. So Nashville came up to tour 1871 and announced this music tech accelerator they were launching. And Howard Tolman, who was CEO of 1871 at the time, was like, Marcus, maybe you should go down to Nashville and check out this music tech thing. I'm like, I have no fucking desire to go to Nashville, man. I like Chicago. And it turned out to be a life-changing experience for us going to Nashville. It was the best thing we ever did. Matter of fact, I'm still in Nashville part-time. That was 2015. And I met you the first time about a year and a half after that we were talking about, 2017.
Yeah.
And this brings it all to a head. The problem I was trying to solve was a discovery problem. How do you recruit talent? And Matt, I know you're doing some cool things around similar problem sets, recruiting talent and, aligning the right people with the right teams at the right time, right? And there's a bit of a science to that, but in the music industry, the top 1% of the people make 70% of all the money. And at the same time, 40 to 50% of that money never makes it to some of the rights holders that need it most. And we realized we had to solve that problem first. Nothing else we did at the bottom of the pyramid was really going to have impact until we finished the inefficiencies of the marketplace, how the money moved.
That's such a cool opportunity and sort of genesis story. And I know you've iterated a lot on the product since then. Yeah. And it seems like you've really captured some magic in how you go about building product, and probably because of the different kinds of products, all the different experiences of different kinds of products that you've built, from your shopping cart airplane to your girl band. What is it about sort of that culture, that product culture that you've created that you think is maybe a secret ingredient that other people could potentially cultivate on their own teams?
I think it's about taking fear out of the environment. There's this company called IDEO, which, they're a phenomenal, you've heard of them, right?
Oh, yeah.
Now, they're a phenomenal design think tank, and they've evolved over the years, but one of the famous stories is that when the computer mouse first came out, it was, really expensive to build. And Steve Jobs approached IDEO, hey, I need a better mouse. I need it for $9. And I don't know what the exact number was, but it was a little like that. And the founder, the designers were inspired by roll-on deodorant for how the trackball moved across an X and Y axis. And that became the inspiration for those less expensive mice. The first ones were actually laser mice that Xerox developed. IDEO's done a lot of innovations like that, and they cultivated an out-of-box thinking environment by removing a lot of the ego and pretension that is it creeps into design very easily.
How do you address that when that does come up in the culture? When that ego flares up, when that
we call it out at Jammber. I think top down. One of the reasons, and I chose my co-founders in the same way. They know they're good at what they do. They don't have to lord that over anyone else. We're here to serve, and we're here to make a positive impact in people's lives. And while we all have an ego, we have we all have PTSD from high school, so to speak, right? It shouldn't get in the way of what's best, And when everyone realizes we're all here for the same purpose and we're here to serve, we remind people that, and the egos kind of realign. But you have to do it at the top. And I never throw titles around if I have to do that, then there's something broken in the culture. It's a delicate balance. And right now we're going through a bit of a hiring burst. So every time we go through a new hiring phase, it's harder and harder to maintain that standards because all of us have baggage, and all of us, there are plenty of cultures out there where it's kind of dog eat dog, and there might even be cultures where that's necessary. But at Jammber, if you're afraid of announcing a better idea because it's your first day in the job, then we all lose.
Yeah.
So how do we create a culture where we pull those ideas out of you the moment you started our company? And I won't say we've arrived, but I do think culture is the most important part of design. How people feel, because design is about feelings. It's about emotions. And that's all we know as human beings are experiencing the world through these 5+ senses. We're experiential beings. And so design is evoking emotion on some level all the time. And if you're not aware, if you're designing from a toxic or limited place, that will come through in what you produce as a product. And if you're designing from a place of servitude and high regard, that will also come through, because software is a great example. I'll end it with this. Software always has a tendency to go back to zeros and ones. It is binary by nature. But people were analog. Right. So if you let your tech team often drive product, they're going to do what the hardware wants them to do. They're going to do what the tools want them to do. They're going to stay in those boxes. And you have to work from the human experience backwards to resist that gravity and make software do what it's supposed to do, which is enrich people's lives.
I love that, man. I love that. And appreciate you pulling back the curtain a little bit about some of the magic that's giving you guys all that traction at Jammber. What, just before we close here, I would love to hear a little bit more about where you're at with Jammber right now, what some of your big opportunities are, and maybe if some talent is listening here, where they can go to check out jobs.
Well, yeah, I accidentally talking over you there. I left out the most important part, which is hiring really amazing people. So I have some pretty awesome designers on my team.
Nice.
And we all hear people say this all the time, hire people better than you or smarter than you. We actually do it at Jammber, and we know we're doing it when our insecurities come out a little bit and we don't want to hire that person. That's the person we hire. So
how do you recruit and find those people?
I still believe that A's attract A's and B's attract C's. I don't mind telling people that I'm one of the best at what I do. And I've honed my skills over time. And if they research my background, they'll hear that reputation. I've worked really hard, and I'm really good at what I do from a tech delivery standpoint and product delivery standpoint. I'm good at monetizing products. But I'm not that great at certain graphics, and I'm not that great at certain operation aspects. And so I'm really looking for someone who's better. If I'm top tier, let's say I'm top 4%, I'm really looking for someone that's top 2% because I want to win. And I'm not going to lose because we brought the wrong people on board. And I've done that. I've hired many wrong people that just weren't good culture fits or just weren't good people for that matter. So that's the most important part, which is where Jammber's at now. And how do you hire at scale when unemployment is under 3%, and then unemployment in IT is under 1% in certain markets, right? How do you hire at scale? Well, you recruit on culture and mission. There are people that would love. Jammber has a legitimate chance to change the world. It's not hyperbole.
Absolutely.
Music is the history of the world. You've heard me say that before. And if we can set that free because of the power of technology and design, what a cool thing to tell your kids that I was a part of the next wave of music, bigger than Spotify, bigger than all the labels, that millions and millions of artists' lives were changed because we showed up and got to work. That's pretty compelling for me anyway. And I think it would be for other people too.
I love that. I love the culture first, mission first approach to recruiting talent. If someone listening is interested in Jammber and wants to follow to see if there's a job for them, where should they go?
Well, if you want to find us that bad, it's not that hard. How bad do you want it?
I love that.
Obviously, our socials are out there at jambermusic.com, JAMMBER music, or handles rather, and then jamber.com. We're pretty easy to find. I'm easy to find. I'm on LinkedIn too, or at Jammber CEO. But yeah, we're always looking for amazing people, and even other entrepreneurs out there. If you guys want to just have that sounding board that I know I need to, and we can all talk. Matt and I had a good conversation even before this podcast, just kind of catching up. So we're here to serve.
Hey, Marcus, thank you so much for sharing your story. And I'm super excited because I know you're going to be speaking at 3686 this year, which is basically like the South by Southwest of the Southeast, August 28th and 29th this year in Nashville, Tennessee.
Yeah, that's right. Wow.
I unfortunately cannot make it to be there this year, but wanted to give Launch Tennessee a huge shout out for putting that on. Yeah. That 3686 conference is incredible, and I know you're going to rock the stage there, man.
Yeah, thanks so much for the love and the shout out. I appreciate that. And I'll never forget when you surprised me with the article you wrote about Jammber those couple years ago. You have no idea how much momentum that put into ourselves. So I love what you're doing for entrepreneurs, man. And we've definitely been a recipient of that grace. So keep it up.
I appreciate that, man. That means a lot to me. Thanks for continuing to be a part of the community. And hey, this is your host, Matt Hunkler. Again, just wanted to say thank you for tuning in. I hope you walk away feeling inspired and armed with tons of insights. Make sure you follow Marcus at Jammber CEO. That's JAMMBER. And then, of course, Jammber at Jammber Music, as Marcus said. And to be among the first to hear the stories about entrepreneurs, investors, and other tech leaders outside of Silicon Valley, give us a subscribe on iTunes, powderkeg.com/iTunes. We'll catch you next time on Powderkeg Igniting Startups.